for joining us on another episode of Popcorn for Breakfast. With me, as always, my co-host, Kirk.
Hello, hello.
I'm your other co-host, Cam. And thank you for joining us here at the earliest on a Thursday, August 25th, which is the date the episode is released. Date of recording is Monday, August 22nd. And this is a movie review edition of the podcast, which that is the one thing we have continued to consistently do week over week. When we couldn't do the What's Poppin' live streams, we kept reviewing movies, so I'm proud of that. We've got another one this week, and this one's a Netflix original film, Kirk, called Day Shift, starring Jamie Foxx, Dave Franco, Snoop Dizzle Dog, among others, and we are going to get into it, but I think, Kirk, because it's on Netflix, we're going to talk spoilers, right? We're going to get into it. This movie is a vampire film, and we're gonna just jump right into it, unless you have anything to preface it with, Kirk. I mean, I see your Twilight background, obviously.
Yes. I mean, what I should have done, I forgot, or maybe it's dirty, I don't know. I should have worn my Hawaiian shirt. You know, Jamie Foxx has his Hawaiian shirt that he rocks for most of this film. I could have matched him. I mean, I don't look like his physique or anything, but I imagine people would draw the connection. They would draw the connection. Yeah,
no, I actually really like that part about this movie, that he's always like rocking the Hawaiian vibe. I don't know that they ever really discuss it, but it's kind of it's just his steez, and that's what he's out there doing. So,
but let me just pick a bone with that, because I have worn a button-up shirt, a short sleeve button-up shirt before, and I've tried to wrangle a puppy or wrangle a child, and it's impossible. So this is complete fiction, that he could then fight a horde of vampires while wearing that and keeping all of the buttons intact. I mean,
that's fair.
I rip a button as soon as I bend over to pick up the dog toy and throw it, and then my child runs and grabs my clothes and rips it clean off my body. So absolute fiction throughout.
0 out of 0, 0 out of 10 kernels. It's over. This you've lost me on the premise totally based on the short sleeve Hawaiian shirt. How dare you?
Immediately throw this in the garbage.
Garbage. All right, let's talk about Day Shift. It is actually my turn to provide the synopsis for this film. So Jamie Foxx's character is a father, and he is going through a bit of family struggles, but he has a young daughter who he adores, and he is just trying to make ends meet. And whenever we first meet him, we see him sort of like cleaning out a pool, and he's got a pool truck with him, and it's like, okay, what's this movie going to be about? But then shortly after that, Jamie Foxx's character, whose name is Bud Jablonski, which is an all-time movie character name, he goes into a home where he sort of immediately encounters a vampire, and there's lots of cues. There's like it's very cold in there. He can see his breath. All the lights are off, and he gets into a vampire battle. We learn that he is a vampire hunter who has sort of been estranged from the conventional vampire hunting union that exists, who has a set of rules and regulations to guide how vampire hunting is meant to be done. I guess they're in some ways connected to the government or something. And basically he is trying to hunt and kill vampires, both to remove the danger from the world, but also to harvest their fangs, which have monetary value in this world. So there is the core plot line is essentially that Jamie Foxx's family is going to move away for financial reasons. He and his wife are not really, they're separated, and they're going to move. She's going to move their kid to Florida to live with her mother. And he's trying to stop that by getting some money, but he's having a hard time doing it. And so he's trying to do so via vampire hunting. Along the way, he tries to reconnect with this union because he can make more money through it, which makes him come in contact with his union rep, who's played by Dave Franco, and it sort of becomes a buddy pick where those two are out hunting vampires and trying to take down the big vampire coalition that's happening in the sort of like Death Valley-ish area of Southern California, like LA. I guess that's not Death Valley. like the LA Valley, Southern SoCal region.
Yeah, they like at least in the establishing shots, they drive and fly right by Capitol Records, the big tower, big famous building. What I love about this the most that you touched on is that the family's going to leave. Megan Good's going to grab the daughter, and they're rolling out because they're estranged. I don't know if they're not officially divorced, are they?
No, I don't think so. I think they're separated.
Got it. And Megan Good drops like this Billy Madison timeline. It says you have 1 week, otherwise I'm leaving my daughter. And man, she sticks to it. She's like, well, in 3 days, like that is when we were leaving. This total arbitrary day that she's like, this is monumental now. And I feel like in Billy Madison, it's the same week, same thing. You have 2 weeks, 1 day per grade, blah, 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 whatever it is. And I just love that about this movie, in that I would absolutely accept that in Billy Madison, but not in this. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm like, wait,
timeline is dumb.
I had to keep reminding myself what the stakes were that were going into this. It's like, if you were really waiting to see like if the money situation could get figured out, you would think that you would have more than a week to like settle that. And yeah, it was hard to kind of like, I had to keep reminding myself, like, wait, why are we doing this again? Oh, yeah, because they're going to move at the end of the week if he doesn't get the money. Right. Got it.
And man, the whole money thing is hilarious, because then after one fight, Jamie Foxx is like, I'm almost there. And it's like, wait, is he actually almost there? Like, could he just do one more of those things and be done?
Right.
Rather than whatever else he did. Oh man, it's such a conundrum.
It is. And it's like, does that resolve all of their marital seeming relationship issues that were happening as well? There's just a lot of questions involved here, and not a lot of answers at times. But let's get into it, Kirk. Let's start with the acting performances. We're going to start with our first superlative, which is, and the Oscar goes to the best actor in the film, actor being meaning actor or actress. We're using the non-gendered term because I think it's more appropriate. They're all actors. It's easier that way.
When you watch the SAG Awards, the general consensus is they're, actor, and I am an actor.
Right. Right. It's how it should be. The only reason people think actor and actress is because of the Oscars, and that's a conversation for a different day. So, what was I saying?
Let's digress. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about the performances in this movie. The best actor, I am going with Dave Franco. I'm going with Dave Franco, who plays the union rep for the vampire hunting union. His character's name is Seth, which is a pretty hilarious name for like... I don't know why that just got me like at multiple times in this movie, the fact that his name was Seth, but he is sort of your like pencil pushing office guy trope, gets pushed out into the field and has to deal with like vampire hunting. Really, he comes into this movie way too late for me because I'm like struggling to get through the early going in this movie, the establishing the foundation and the world and things like that. It takes so long. And the initial character interactions are so rough, and the way that they establish the plot, the dialogue is clunky, the acting is spotty as all get out, the characters don't have any real chemistry, and the first time you get a semblance of chemistry is with Dave Franco and Jamie Foxx, and that's because of the heavy lifting that Dave Franco is doing to sort of make it work. That's not to say that Jamie Foxx isn't also doing a good job, but I do think that he does a great Dave Franco himself does a great job of establishing the character dynamic, carving out how each of these two play off of each other, and establishing a really good comedic foreground and back and forth that they can sort of play against the rest of the movie. It helps bring some life into the movie, bring some levity into it, because it is a preposterous concept, so it has to be silly at times, and Dave Franco brings a lot of that silliness, does so in a very professional way. He does a good job approaching his scenes, being very intentional, and he gets turned into a vampire later in this film, which is one of the funniest scenes that ensues after he's turned into a vampire. And just he handles that whole transformation and does so in the exact way that his character would, which is just really well done character work on his part. So I have to give it to Dave Franco, who really I felt like was the strength of this crew through and through.
Wonderful choice. I love that Dave Franco. Much better than his older brother and
Yes.
the antics that he gets involved in. So you keep being you. And also, I love that him and Allison Brie are married. I think that's just adorable. I hope they stay together. Please stay together.
Please give us something to believe in.
Yeah. All right. My turn. I'm going with Mr. Jamie Foxx. 2 X's if you've never heard his name, but if you've never heard his name, you've been living under a rock. 91 film and TV credits. Some of those are music videos, but whatever. That's fine. Music videos are art too. I think that when people think of Jamie Foxx, they think of like a few good performances. I think they think of Ray, for which he won his Oscar, Django Unchained, obviously. And more recently, I think they're going to think of him for No Way Home and how he resurrected his character of Electro in a much more fantastic way, as well as his voice in Soul. Killed it. Absolutely killed it. The Pixar, Disney Pixar Soul. I think that when people think of him, they only think of a few good things, but really that list of 91, there's more pros than cons, but his cons, his movies that tank, they really tank. Like his attempt at performances in those other ones, he was just totally miscast or had a terrible director that didn't know how to highlight him. I think that in this movie, the director knew how to highlight Jamie Foxx. I say that with a big asterisk because the first 15 minutes of this movie are horrible. I mean, I don't want to say unbearable, unwatchable, close. The first 15 minutes, that first sequence of this film, it's a big fight scene, like Cameron mentioned. It is just not good. It's like overly campy.
Oh my God.
And the rest of the movie isn't like that. The rest of the movie has humor in some of the fighting, but it has real fights. I think the trope of having the old woman turn into this big, strong villain, dead villain usually, is just over. We've done it, right? Like ever since it was done in The Shining in room 22, whatever, like that, ever since that happened, people are like, oh, we got to do that. People are not going to expect it. It's going to be shocking. No, it's not shocking in the slightest. I need you to stop. Because it made Jamie Foxx look bad for what the rest of this performance was actually pretty good. It was really good. I thought that he carried his beats well. He had established relationships with each character in a unique way. And I think that his physicality is above all else. I mean, your boy is in his 50s and he is just, I mean, he could outrun me in a 50-yard dash because I am widely out of shape. I just want to say that his commitment to this role, commitment to this character soared after the first 15 minutes. Bravo, Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, it took some time, man. It took some real time for I think him to settle in and for the movie to settle in, just because I think it was set back so far by the beginning of this movie, and they really bungle establishing the initial plot line and establishing the world and things like that. It's just a total mess. It's like a really stupid Zombieland knockoff at the beginning, and the dialogue is very dumb too. I feel like even those first few scenes with his daughter, it's like, ouch. Whereas like at the end, you feel pretty connected to their whole piece, and it just takes some time. But I think, you know, by the end, he is in a really good spot with that character, and it pulls together. But man, to your point, rough beginning. Excuse me. For my scene stealer, which is what we're going to move to next, this is sort of the unsung hero of the cast. I'm going to go with Natasha Liu Bordizzo, who plays Heather. Heather is the neighbor in the building to Jamie Foxx that we meet halfway through the movie. Turns out that she is sort of a vampire spy who was put up to watching him, but ends up becoming an ally in this sort of like half vampire, half human vampire hunting task force that they pull together between Snoop Dogg, Jamie Foxx, Dave Franco, and Natasha Liu Bordizzo. I thought she was great. I thought she did a really good job within the confines of this world. She sort of seemed to be the one person who was really bought into her supporting role and like really leaned into the world building. She did a lot of good combat work. She did a lot of good, like, reacting to other people's dialogue when she didn't specifically have lines. She was always in it when she was in the scene. She was always active, making choices that her character would. She really didn't have a ton of screen time to build out her character, but I thought she did a great job doing it. From their first scene with Jamie Foxx, she established immediate chemistry, and you're immediately interested in kind of what they're bringing to the table, and you're excited to see more. So when she becomes sort of a fulcrum of the plot, whenever it turns out that she's sort of she is a vampire who has been spying on Jamie Foxx and sort of led the bad people to her family, and that whole thing pops off, you're immediately more interested in the movie because she's been doing a good job of making her character intriguing and doing a good job of laying the groundwork. So I really like what she brought to the table. She is, picking up some momentum in her career, and she's actually going to be in the Ahsoka series that is coming up on Disney Plus within the Star Wars universe. So that is exciting, and I'll be looking forward to that. Great work, Natasha Liu Bordizzo.
Brilliant. I watched the movie farther away than you did. I watched it the premiere weekend, and I forgot about her only because I've watched so many movies in between, and she really does a fantastic job. She really does. Excellent choice. Excellent choice. My choice for Scene Stealer, as everyone knows him, Calvin Cortazar Brodus. A few people call him Snoop Dogg, but I really like to call him Calvin Cortazar Brodus.
Really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, CCB sometimes I call him by, his initials. Crazy that was contrived into Snoop Doggy Dogg, Snoop Dogg, DJ Snoopadelic, Snoop Rock, Snoop Lion, Big Snoop Dogg, Snoopy, Snoopzilla, Snoop-a-Lot, and Uncle Snoop, just all of his little aliases to go by there. I can't imagine having that many nicknames to keep that straight, but I thought Snoop Dogg did a fantastic job in this movie. He definitely had my eye whenever he was on the screen. I think that he was in, correct me if I'm wrong, was he in the cult, the now cult classic MTV original film Pootie Tang or not?
Oh, he could have been. He's had a few moments, a few good credits in his day.
Yeah, I feel that whatever he came on screen at first, he knew his first time on sets, that he knew that he was the cameo. And to a degree, he absolutely is a cameo appearance here, but he has a full-fledged story arc. And let me tell you, he just leans into it. I mean, he knows that he is Snoop Dogg on screen, and he's not really trying to create this really deep character, but he's also not trying to just be like playing himself. It's such a weird line, and I really can't describe it, but all I know is that I loved what he was doing on the screen. I'm gonna need some more time on a second watch back on this to say, oh, here's what he was doing, here's the direction he took, or here's what the director told him to do, because he walks in that so well. So Snoop Dogg, thanks for joining this movie, and I'm glad you survived by the end of it to help us see Day Shift 2, or whatever the sequel to this looks like, I'm sure is coming.
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised with Snoop Dogg. Seems to just sort of be good at everything. I don't really know what that's about, but he was really effortless in this movie. He was definitely a contender for my scene stealer. The character that they slid him into, Big John, is pretty awesome. Just like a total vampire killing cowboy. And I think to your point, Kirk, like he just doesn't do too much with it. He like in a good way. He doesn't overdo it. He stays in his lane. He does his thing. He sticks to his character. It's a very sort of understated thing, but it's never unnatural. It doesn't break the suspension of disbelief. It's really fine work by him on that role. So I like the pick, and we split every category. We were able to talk about 4 different actors, which doesn't always happen whenever we do this. So that's awesome. All right, let's get into the production side of things and talk Showstopper and then director shoes. We're going to start with Showstopper, which is what blew us away about the movie. I mean, I'll be honest, like nothing in this movie blew me away, but I did sort of like The thing that I liked the most about this movie, I think, was the world building of vampires living in modern society. You know, they do it they slowly build it throughout the movie. They do this. They make it clear that not everybody understands that there are vampires out and about, and that there is sort of like this underground league of people who are like the initiated, who know about it, and they are the ones who are responsible for dealing with it. I can't remember if they outright say it or if it's just alluded to, that like this vampire killing union sort of like works with the government to eliminate the vampire population in the US because it's a problem.
Yep.
It's very interesting. It's almost like a John Wick, you know, the continental society, the hotels that are linked together, and like they sort of build that out in a way to where there's all these people who know and are aware of it. But it remains a shadow to the real world. So I really dug that. I liked that all of the vampire stuff that happens in this movie is your very cliche original vampire. Like, this isn't like an I Am Legend thing, or, you know, we've seen infinite different takes, but like, this is old school, straight up vampires. I mean, they stop short of turning into bats, but it's like, they can't see themselves in mirrors. You stab them through the heart with a wooden stake, they die. They don't like garlic. The sun burns their skin. Like, it is old school vampires. Like, sure, there's a level of like zombie-ishness, but there's always a kinship between zombies and vampires anyway, given the way that they thirst for human flesh, they bite people, they turn into them, etc., etc. But they really stuck to the book in terms of vampires, and I think that made it more engaging, because as a viewer, you're like, okay, I know the rules of this world, and they do a good job without really saying too much to just be like, yes, these are the vampires, you know, right? Like, stay inside, they get killed by a wooden stake, all of that kind of thing. So I dug that. They didn't go overboard with like explaining all the different rules. They just kind of let you pick it up through context, which is kind of how I think it should go. And I thought that was pretty well done, and that's what I liked the most about the movie.
Yeah, they had different like classes of vampire, right? Like Uber and I can't remember.
There was like Ubers, there were Easterners, there were
juveniles.
No, there were elders. I know that because it's like once you reach a certain threshold, you're an elder. But yeah, a lot of them were like regional, different types of names.
Right. But then those didn't matter enough, right? Like when they dropped the names, I'm like, okay, say the names like 8 times, say what they are. That's important. They really weren't that important. They were just like a color to the story versus a critical thing that you had to learn and then immediately apply. So I thought that was good too. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. What about you, Kirk? What was your showstopper?
It's tricky. It really is tricky, but I think I have to go with, this was a straight up good villain, great villain. Audrey San Fernando, Carla Souza. She had a bone to pick. It was a creative villain, right? Because one would just say, oh, that's her mother, right? Like that she was older. No, it was actually her daughter, but her daughter lived longer than she did before she was turned. That part of the storyline, that part of the such a unique villain origin story. I would just love to see the sequel of this where we get a flashback to something of that and to see the devastation, because it was brilliant. I really thought it was brilliant. I don't want to say the whole story. I don't want to put the whole story in the bucket of my entire showstopper, but it was just a incredibly well-built villain that was a slow build. You see her, you're like, okay, she knows this person, probably her mother. No, big reveal, daughter. And then you have the connection of you killed my daughter, I'm gonna kill your daughter, Jablonski to Jamie Foxx's character. And then you have this like real fear of like that she might actually do it. Like I was very uncomfortable when she announced that in her lair and everything. So I was very, very happy with the villain of this. It just pumped the stakes of this up so much higher than I thought it could. Again, especially after the first 15 minutes. And it really gave struck fear into me. and just the full roundabout collection, as well as part 2 of my showstopper here. The coming back together of the family, the reuniting of the family of Jamie Foxx and Megan Good saying like, no, like, yeah, like we do care for each other. I would throw my body in front of a crazy vampire and take the bite for you to survive. I don't care what we've been through. I love you at my core. I love you. And all that doesn't work if you don't have such a strong villain. So bravo to the writing and to especially Carla Souza, who plays Audrey San Fernando, on being so menacing. Like, she was good, man. She was good.
Yeah, I like that pick. A good villain goes a long way, man. It goes a really long way towards making something work, because, you know, in something like this where you've got a new world that you're dealing with, new characters, you're kind of getting up to speed, the stakes have to feel high, no pun intended there, to, I mean, maybe it was. I don't know. I can't explain my subconscious.
We've said the stakes probably 14 times,
That's
and every
right.
time I've said it, I'm like, oh no.
But it's true. Like, they have to be high for you to buy in, and I feel like a good villain does that, and so, yeah, I dig that. I dig that take. Okay. By the way, the vampire types were Uber, Juvenile, Spider, Eastern, and I think that's it. And there's articles out there that kind of explain it. I believe Uber Vamp was coined in Buffy, if I remember correctly. So
Cool.
I don't know if that's just like a fan thing. Oh, and the other one was just Southern vampires. So in the inevitable sequel, because this is a Netflix movie, we'll probably get further explanations on those, perhaps. But just figured I would circle back on that. Okay.
Love it.
Other side, director's shoes, things we did not like about this movie, things we would change. Man, there's a lot of different ways I could go here. The thing that really bothered me was the inconsistency of the special effects in this movie, because it was vast. And it felt like at any given moment you weren't watching fight scenes in the same world all the time. Like, sometimes it was like insanely campy Sam Raimi kind of effects, only not intentional, like accidentally bad effects, or effects that were bad despite the best effort of the people involved. And other times the effects would be totally different. It would be, using different techniques, both practical and visual effects, to accomplish the same things, which gave it a sort of like inconsistent feel. Like, you felt like you were watching different scenes from different movies. At some point they turned to like lots of physical hand-to-hand, foot-to-head kind of combat, and that feels very different from what has happened in the rest of the film. And I just felt like all of the effects related to vampires kind of like walking around like Korean water ghosts, like with their spine all bent, like The Exorcist and stuff like that, looked real bad. I thought the skin burning in the sunlight looked real bad. There's just a lot of effects that were pretty awful, and a lot of times like things that could have been practical that weren't. Like people getting thrown upstairs and stuff like that. That they ended up using CGI just made it look really cheap, and it didn't fit stylistically within the movie. A lot of times we talk about effects that are campy, which means that like they look fake, but they do so for a specific effect. They do so to evoke a certain style and theming and things like that within the movie. That was not the case here. This was just kind of like pretty shoddy work, I felt like, in terms of how it looked aesthetically. There was just a lot of inconsistency to it, and that just drove me crazy all the way up into the end. And it killed like what could have been some pretty good action sequences, including the car chase and others. So that just did not do it for me. But I think this movie has issues beyond that, in terms of, I thought the writing wasn't particularly inspired throughout with regard to the dialogue. I felt like acting was really inconsistent pretty much across the board. I don't love the plot of this movie. I think it's pretty thin. And they're like almost unabashedly like setting up a sequel in a way that I just really hate. I hate when movies are just like really out there setting up a sequel unless it's like a planned trilogy, which I don't think that is what's happening here, but that just drove me crazy that they're like mentioning El Jefe and like mentioning all these other things that are clearly meant to allude to a sequel. Just like annoying. Make the movie that you're making. Don't mention all this other crap to try to get me to watch the second movie. It just feels way too plastic. And so yeah, I had lots of issues with this movie, many of which I haven't even scratched the surface of, but I will just leave it at that for my director's shoes. The biggest one out of all of them was the visual effects, both practical and special effects, just did not work for me.
I feel that. Inconsistency is this movie's nickname.
Yes.
That was not a clever sentence.
It's this movie's middle name.
All.
It should be called Day Inconsistency Shift.
Yes. Just as inconsistent as the CGI and practical effects are, so is the script. There are times when this script is absolutely incredible, like when Seth talks about his just absolute despise for Carol.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
I mean, he talks about in depth about the yogurt and the label and how the label, you had to peel it back to know it was his, and how he's going to spit in it. And it's just absolutely incredible. But then you have lines like there's the, I don't remember who says it, but someone says, do you know what insanity is? It's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Like, okay, it's 2022. You cannot put that into a movie anymore.
It's been in 1,000 scripts, dude. It's been in 1,000 scripts. It's the same as starting a speech or an essay with Merriam-Webster's Dictionary defines.
So bad. You can't do it. You just cannot do it. Like, that's just a snippet of things. And then you have what are some other quick hitters if I can find them fast enough? They're talking about how, you know, vampires don't use the bathroom. Like, that's just like cheap humor that just didn't land. But then you have other parts where that shouldn't have landed, where Jamie Foxx is listing off the different vampire movies and gets into Twilight, and then there's this banter about how do you know all the movies? You know, like those things, like things that shouldn't work because of those two's chemistry. It's so inconsistent. There are moments where you can tell the improv kind of surfaced and it didn't work, or you can tell that the actors tried to improv it to enhance, which I think was the Twilight references, and I think they made it better. But a lot of the times it falls short, and it's just like painful. It's just severe secondhand embarrassment to watch some of those moments. So for me, the inconsistency of the script just really kills it for me, because if they were to pick one and not walk this line, pick one direction, not like it, not it almost sounds like a writer's battle, like writer number one, writer number two are saying, no, this is really good, okay, like that's pretty good, throw it in there, right? Like they're being too kind to throw it in. They needed to be a little bit more critical of what direction and how precise the story that they were telling. They just got out of hand. But the things that hit, and the things that did not hit, they really pulled the score down for me, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yep. I feel that for sure. Yeah. Let's get into it. Final thoughts and scores on Day Shift. Which, by the way, I was just thinking, like the title of the movie doesn't really have any sort of plot relevance other than the fact that like he is working the day shift in terms of he's only allowed to hunt vampires during the day, but that never feels totally relevant because there's lots of vampire hunting that still goes on at night and whatnot. So it's a bit of a misnomer, the name of the movie, I feel like. But yeah, I feel like I've tipped my hand a little bit on this movie. I don't find it to be a very inspired piece of film. I think that it feels pretty plastic. It feels just very run of the mill. Not a really solid idea. It has a few highlights. I think that the Dave Franco, Jamie Foxx dynamic and the dynamic they start to build at the end with the Heather character and the family starts to work. a lot, and I think that Snoop Dogg's character plays into that as well. So there is a bit of a team dynamic that starts to come together that is attractive and works decently well. There's a couple of world building pieces that have potential for sure, but I think that overall the script is uninspired. I think the effects are shoddy. I think the look of it, the aesthetic is very generic. There's not really doing anything there stylistically to draw your attention in. And it just ends up becoming a very blah sort of vampire film that doesn't really make you want more. It doesn't leave you going, oh, I do want Day Shift 2. I want to see what goes on with these guys. You're just kind of like, okay, that was a vampire movie. Got it. There's just nothing about it that's really memorable or sticks out. It's a very forgettable movie. It feels, when people talk about like, oh, it's a Netflix movie, people start to use that derogatory term. Like, this is the kind of movie they're talking about. This is the reason that term exists. I feel like there's nothing here to write home about. And there's certainly more bad than good to discuss with regard to this movie. So for that reason, I'm giving it a 3.4 out of 10 kernels for Day Shift.
I never thought about how powerful that is now. So a lot of people use that term kind of like with Hallmark, like, well, it's a Hallmark movie. You know what you're getting out of a Hallmark movie, right? You're going to get smiles. You're going to get romance. You're going to get a prince or a princess out of place. You're going to get mostly holidays, Christmas. You're going to get an event that has gone wrong and someone has to save the day. And I feel like that's how people are like, oh, it's a Hallmark movie. Well, take it for what it is. And Netflix is doing its own same thing, a lot of it being big budget action movies, and to just insert into its niche genre after that, which is what they're pumping out at a rapid pace. So I love the fact that we've danced around it a lot, but it is a derogatory statement because it does diminish the value of the film because it's not quite... and not quite is not the right word, but it's not a great film when it comes down to it. I love how you said about Day Shift, the entire title doesn't even matter because we hear them say that right before he goes out and then it's never spoken about again. He has plenty of vampires that he finds during the daytime without any issue or any struggle. So why call it Day Shift? It's not even that cool of a name. There should have been something else that played into the creative team that could have come up with something better. I think that for whatever weird reason, before this movie came out, I don't know if subconsciously before it came out, I had seen the promo and I was like, vampires. I'm not like a huge vampire guy, not a huge monster guy, but I'm going to watch Interview with the Vampire for the first time. And I did. And this movie is somehow better than that movie. So my score is a little skewed right now because I found this to be much more fascinating than that. But it did have a lot of the same tropes. Like things were rushed at times because there wasn't long enough of a runway. It almost feels like if Interview of a Vampire had planned to be a trilogy of some sort, like if they had gotten the rights from the original author Anne Rice to say, hey, we want to make this into a trilogy, they could have and probably should have done it with that. And now it's going to become an FX series, as I understand. But Day Shift itself crammed things in to give us the lead on a sequel, to give us the lead on a trilogy or whatever they're thinking. And it just doesn't work. It drives the viewer crazy because you know what they're doing. It's so obvious. I don't think I'm as low as Cam on this, but it's also not something that I can really give some phenomenal score. I'm going to go with the 4.7 out of 10 kernels today for Day Shift.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what was said there. I think that it's a shame. I don't want Netflix movies to be a derogatory term. There have been many Netflix movies that I have liked, but people have accused them of doing exactly this. Just trying to kind of squeeze as much as they can out of a pretty mediocre plot and story and concept by putting a couple A-list guys and girls on the billing and just kind of like letting it go. You know, if you build it, they will come, sort of thing. But it's a shame. I don't want it to be that. There have been some really good ones, and this one had potential. It just really failed to realize it, which is it's a shame. It's a shame.
It is.
All right, Kirk. As I understand it, you have a game, my friend.
I do.
All right, let's hear about it.
All right, we're gonna categorize some famous people, and then there's a little twist at the end. This is not like a game that we've done before. Maybe slightly, but it's very different. So I'm really excited about it. Okay, so this game is called Vampire, Human, or Lizard People.
Oh yes.
I don't think there's another person on this planet that can define lizard people as well as you. So I'm going to put you on the spot. If you could please give examples or a brief description to let audience members know what lizard people might be as we categorize them.
Yeah, I would say lizard person or lizard people is a term that I use a lot to describe undesirables. Not in like the sense that most people think of the term undesirable, which is like an elitist white person describing like neighborhood kids or something like that. But just like somebody who really is a plague upon the earth, like somebody who adds no value. I think there was a Facebook account for a while, maybe it still exists, where I first heard this term that was called like Lizard People of New York. It was meant to be like the antithesis to like People of New York. And all these people were just like scumbags supreme, like totally out just for themselves, making horrible choices, putting terrible products out into the world, like just engines of chaos who do nothing but self-serve and do so to the detriment of their fellow man. That's a lizard person to me. Ezra Miller is a lizard person. Like they might be the king and or queen of the lizard people if I'm the one who's deciding that.
Yes, that's very true. Ezra Miller is not on this list because it's too easy. It's just too
that's
easy.
That's a softball.
Unanimous,
yeah,
right?
That's a softball.
So we're gonna categorize these people. I have a list of 18 because we're just gonna like book it through these. And some I might say, hold on, give me an explanation. But otherwise, it's probably gonna be like, yeah, that tracks. So let's start it off. Number 1, Nick Cage, vampire, human, or lizard people.
I'm gonna go vampire on Nick Cage because he's too eccentric to be a normal person. He's not just a human, but he's not a lizard person. I think he's good people, and I think that he really is just out there to have a good time. But he also is like so mysterious and otherworldly that he almost has to be a mythical creature of some type. So for the lack of a better option, I have to go vampire here.
Yeah, there's also like the rumor, like there's these old pictures that people have surfaced that they think Nick Cage was like born like in the 1400s from these pictures.
Right? Yes. Yeah, I could see it. That would make him
actually a vampire. So I believe in that as well, wholeheartedly. Next up, number 2, Margot Robbie, vampire, human, lizard people.
I'm going to go human. I feel like Margot Robbie seems like a really decent person overall. I read that and I know that this is PR, so I'm not necessarily falling for the trap here, but she sent like bottles of champagne to every cast member on the show that she got her start on in Australia. That was like a soap opera. Thought that was
Neighbors.
really, yeah. I thought that was really cool. I don't know. I've watched a lot of press junkets with Margot. I've seen her do a lot of different roles. I really feel like she's just out there trying to do a good job, trying to hustle and do her thing. And so I think human. For sure.
I love it. Keanu Reeves.
Vampire. Easily. Like, the dude does not age. He has some vampire-centric features, like his cold, pale skin. I assume it's cold. I don't really know, but he's kind of he's a slender guy. So he gives off a lot of vampire vibes. He's a guy who, like, if somebody was like, oh yeah, he's actually 250 years old, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Like that, I'll buy that. It's the same with Nick Cage. Like, oh yeah, Nick Cage was born in the 1400s. Yeah, certainly. That makes sense.
Yeah. I would just hope that they're brothers, at least of some sort.
Yeah, they could be. They could be.
Or old pals, They were the best men in each other's like first or third vampire wedding, whatever it might be. Johnny Depp.
Ooh, toughie. Okay, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to go lizard person for Johnny Depp because, and listen, I was privy to all of the trial stuff. I knew multiple people who were into all of the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial things that were going on. And my stance on that was effectively like, I think the determination that the court made in that particular case was the right one. That said, I think that dude is an engine of chaos. I think he is not somebody you want in your circle. I think he's bringing all kinds of bad vibes along with him. I think he's a super ultra diva galore. Someone who, you know, he didn't necessarily deserve everything that happened to him as a result of the Amber Heard stuff, but I think that guy's bringing bad juju into your life if he's in your circle. That's my read on the whole thing.
I gotcha. We might have some people out there who write to us. I'd be interested.
I'm open to talking about it. That's just like I'm. A lot of it is total speculation, but a lot of it is like you hear the stories and the stuff that has gone on that he was like, yeah, that happened, and you're like, okay. You start to get a picture for like what kind of dude he is. And I'm not saying he's incapable of goodness, but I would say that I would be very hesitant to add him into my inner circle at any point.
Yeah, he's like a classier, just because he has money, Stephen Avery.
Yeah.
Right? Because Stephen Avery, innocent of killing Teresa Hallback, but absolutely guilty of 100 other things.
Yeah, absolutely like somebody that you want to keep your eye on, right? Like,
right,
for sure.
Right. He did throw that cat in the fire, after all.
Right.
Next up, Tom Hanks, vampire, human, lizard people.
He's a human, but he's a borderline vampire. I think just because I always assume that vampires are insanely charming. That's sort of the thing that they do with Dracula is like he's a total charmer, you know. And is there anyone on Earth more charming than Tom Hanks? I mean, everyone loves Tom Hanks. I've never heard anybody say an ill word about the guy or met anybody that's like, if you just mention his name, you're like, oh, it has Tom Hanks. Like, oh, I love him. You know, everybody says that. So I think he's a human with a hint of vampire energy going on there for sure.
Okay. Maybe he's like a vampire child. Like he got that gene from his parents.
He could be like the human president of the vampire underworld. So like they would elect him.
He's the liaison. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Avril Lavigne.
Avril. Oh.
And this is pre-conspiracy. This is the original Avril.
This is the original Avril, not the one that we know now, who is the replacement that the government has inserted.
She is absolute. In fact, if you want to split this Avril 1 and Avril 2 into whichever category you want, feel free to do so.
If Avril 2 exists, I think obviously lizard person. There's no helping someone like that who would just step into, you know, somebody else's shoes who's been kidnapped by the Illuminati or whatever the theory is. Like that's a despicable human being, no doubt about it. I have no qualms or really strong opinions at all about Avril. I mean, you know, she does try to steal people's boyfriends. She sings songs about that. That's partially lizard person behavior. But, you know, at the same time, the heart wants what the heart wants. And you got to get after it. So I'm not one who can throw stones not knowing the details of the situation. I'm leaning human on Avril.
Okay.
But if she was assassinated by the government and replaced by a shadow rogue agent, that person who is pretending to be her now and is doing the TikToks and whatnot is certainly a lizard person with no, I mean, they have no soul.
Yeah, there's some heightened consciousness on those, right? Because they're absolutely saying like, if I was, a different Avril, like that's only something that someone would have to prove that they weren't the original Avril.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
Man. It really puts your brain in a pretzel if you think about it too hard.
Next up, Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, vampire, obviously. He doesn't age. I think he's clearly 500 years old. It's the only explanation. He's never been any age other than the age he is right now, physically. So, and no one can prove me otherwise. So I think he's 1000% a vampire, and will suck your blood if he gets the chance. That said, I think he's a good guy.
Probably a good vampire, as we saw in this movie, Day Shift.
That's right. It is possible. They do exist.
Next up, Jason Sudeikis.
Ooh, a toughie.
Not Ted Lasso, but
Not
Jason
Ted Lasso.
Sudeikis.
Okay, are we to assume that he intentionally had Olivia Wilde served in the middle of CinemaCon?
That is the question.
that is the ultimate question, because that is Hallmark lizard person behavior. You know, like that's there's no getting around that. If you have somebody served papers in the middle of a presentation on a stage that's important for their career, that is lizard person behavior. As far as I have read, that has not been proven, and he has gone as far as to say that was not his intent and didn't know that was going to happen. I'm going to go human, but he's on a watch list for that. That's borderline lizard person type involvement, regardless of the situation with him and Olivia Wilde. Excellent.
All right. We're going to go 2 more, and then we're going to go rapid fire. No commentary allowed. Okay. How do you feel about that?
I love it.
Next one up, Florence Pugh.
Human. But just because she's awesome. I think she's great. I have no qualms.
That's right. She would lead the resistance against either one of these other 2 groups, right? Absolutely. And finally, before you get no words, you just categorization. You ready?
Yes.
Jared Leto.
Lizard person, not vampire like Morbius. He would love if you thought he was a vampire. He's actually a lizard person. He is an engine of chaos. Nothing good coming out of that factory. That's for sure.
No. And just a reminder, we crashed on Apple TV Plus. I mean, he's just living his truest self, maybe his best performance, because he is literally just himself with an accent. It's insane. It's insane. Go. Here we go. Next up, we've got 8 or 9 to cruise through. You ready?
Yes.
Pharrell Williams. Vampire, human, lizard people. Go.
Vampire.
Elijah Wood.
Human.
Snoop Dogg.
Vampire.
Jennifer Lopez.
Lizard person.
Rob Lowe.
Ooh. Lizard person.
Ooh, that's exciting. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Lizard person. Lizard person.
John Stamos.
Human.
Oh, surprising. I would have categorized him as a vampire for sure. And finally, Steven Seagal.
Lizard person. The king of the lizard people, for sure.
All right, now listen. Here's what's happened. We have entered the vampire, lizard people, human wars, Cameron. This is what's occurred. And I believe that you sacrificed yourself and you are now a vampire. Okay. So you are team vampire.
Yes.
Because if you and all 6'9" of you, because to me you're 6'9",
sure,
because I'm not very tall.
We can go with that.
If you were on camera and you turned around and you're a vampire, whoever's in front of you is absolutely getting just like killed immediately. There's no like your wingspan, you'll immediately be able to catch them by whatever, by shirt, by hair, by arm. They're done, right?
It's true.
But your backstory is that you saved a whole gaggle of people. Most likely myself, as I recall us walking through the Walking Dead experience at Universal.
That's right.
And said there was a vampire hiding in there. That's actually the moment that this happened. I am a weak and feeble human. I don't believe I'm a lizard person. And so I want to know who wins out of this war. Let me recap the teams here.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me who wins. Now, you can't be partial that you are Team Vamp.
Yes.
So that's
okay.
You got to put that out of your mind, but I just want to give you a home base. Ready? So Vamps are Nick Cage, Keanu Reeves, Paul Rudd, Pharrell, and Snoop Dogg. Humans are myself, Margot Robbie, Tom Hanks, Avril Lavigne 1, Jason Sudeikis, maybe, Florence Pugh, Elijah Wood, John Stamos. And the lizard people, Johnny Depp, Avril 2, look out, Jared Leto, Jennifer Lopez, Rob Lowe, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Steven Seagal. Who's winning this fight?
Oh, Lord.
Who's winning it?
I think it's the lizards, dude. I do. I think it's the lizards. I think the vampires will put up a fight. The humans stand no chance.
No chance.
The lizard people, that's a scary crew, though. That's like they will do what it takes to get the job done.
I'm most fearful of Avril 2 and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow is the one that strikes the most fear in my heart. For real. Because if she just started levitating and shooting blasts of pure negative energy out of her hands, there's not a person on this earth that would be surprised by that.
She has a whole arsenal of goop to attack everyone with as well. And who knows the toxins, because those aren't actually cleansing.
No, it's just a shell company to like cover her R&D into the nether realm of goos and potions and nonsense. That's what it all is.
Man, oh man. I agree with your assessment.
I'm stressed
lizard people
now.
Would come because you're worried about the impending doom of the lizard people taking over.
I am. It concerns me.
Well, you did it. You heard it here first that, vampire, human, lizard people, we will all suffer. And I think we should turn this into a major motion picture.
And also, if you are just now hearing that there's a conspiracy theory related to Avril Lavigne, please Google that. And make sure you have a good chunk of time carved out because the rabbit hole is extensive, but it's a good time. I highly recommend it. 10 out of 10.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great game, Kirk. Appreciate it. Let's hope that we don't meet our fate at the hands of the lizard people. It would not be good. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to our review of Day Shift and our game, Vampire, Human, or Lizard Person. It's been a good time. Thank you so much for sticking with us this week. We will review something next week. I don't know what it's going to be, but until then, we want to give a special thanks to our executive producer, Ryan Spriggs, and the band Rhetoric. We will see you guys next week.
Talk to you then.